The kit's going to come with some watercolor bookmarks, and one of them, there's going to be 4 of them, and then one of them is going to have a stencil on it for a feather. And on the other side of that one, there's going to be a mask for a feather. And that's probably the first one we're going to do. And then it's also going to have a watercolor palette and a dropper. And you're going to need to provide 2 cups of water, one for the dirty, one for the clean, and then some paper towel so you can clean off your dropper. Now the first thing I'm going to do is use the dropper with the clean water. I'm just going to drop some water onto the feather, just right inside the stencil. And then I'm just going to take my finger and I'm just going to spread that around, spread the water so that the feather is all nice and wet inside the stencil. And that's how we're going to get started. Then we're going to also take some clean water in the dropper and put it on the palette, on the colors that we're going to be using. So we can get that paint all nice and juicy wet. So I'm just going to put a bunch of drops on the palette there on the different colors and get that paint going. Mix it up a little bit with the end of the dropper. And then I'm going to suck up some of that red. And I'm just going to put it up at the tip of the feather and just drop it right in and let it spread. Let it spread however it wants to spread. And then I'm just going to keep going like that. I'm going to wash my dropper in between colors. I'm going to wash it out in the dirty water and then wipe it on my paper towel. And then I'm going to go grab the next color, which will be yellow for me, because I'm just going to go rainbow colors, rainbow order. So it's going to be red, then yellow, then green, then blue, and then I think I'm going to end with purple. So next is the yellow. And I'm just going to suck up some yellow in the dropper and drop that right at the bottom of the red and just let it kind of blend in. It's going to make some orange with the red, and then it's going to slide on down and be yellow. And then I'm going to grab the green and so on until I've got all the colors in the feather. Now that's looking like an awful lot of water on there to me, so I'm going to grab a paper towel and just lay it right down on there and try and soak up some of that extra water that's on there. It's just way too wet. And I'm accidentally picking up too much of the color though, I think. But let me get the water off of there and then I'll put some color back in. So get all that extra water off. And then I'm basically just going to do what I did before and put some more back on, but hopefully it's not going to be quite so wet this time. I think that looks good. We're going to let that fully dry, and then we'll take the stencil off after it's totally dry. All right, so while the feather's drying, we're going to go ahead and try and do a night sky one. So I'm just going to put a bunch of water on my plain blank bookmark here and then just rub it in with my finger. I just want my bookmark to be a little damp, not soaking wet or anything, just a little damp. So I'm going to start with the purple. I'm just going to make some swirly swirls with purple on the paper, just however I can with my dropper. So then I'm just going to clean my dropper out with the purple, get the purple out of it so then I can pick up some of the dark blue. So the next thing I'm going to do is put some dark blue around the edges. And maybe a little in the middle, but mostly around the edges. I'm having trouble getting the paint to the edge with my dropper, so I think I'm just going to use my finger a little bit, just to play around with the paint with my finger some. And then maybe I will do some blue in swirls going across the center there, just to break up the purple a little bit. And since I've made a little bit of a mess, I'm just going to wipe up some of the paint that got on my table here. Oh yeah, it's all over the place. Let me wipe it up over there. And now we'll go with the black. And again, the black's just going to be right at the edges. It's not for the middle of it really, it's just for the top and the edges. Well, it looks like it's got too much water again, so I'm going to try and take some off, but yeah. Yeah, I kind of took off everything. So I'm just going to kind of do it again. Just, drop everything back in there again and see what I can come up with. Yeah, and right about this point, I'm just gonna start using my finger again. Just have some fun with my finger, just push stuff around, get it where I want it to go. Just make some blobs. So we're just gonna let this dry now, and we're gonna come back and put the trees in later. All right, and while our night sky is drying, we're gonna get out another bookmark here and do some flowers on this one. So I'm just mixing up some purple. I'm gonna suck it up into my dropper. I'm gonna put 5 drops in a little circle. Right, and then I'm gonna clean out my dropper so I can get some clean water. And I'm gonna put 5 drops of clean water a little further out than the 5 drops I put there. It's gonna be where I want my tip of my petal of my flower to be. So where I want each petal to end, that's where I'm gonna put a drop of water. So I'm gonna put 5 drops of water, and that is as big as I want my flower to be. So now I'm going to take the tip of my dropper. I'm just going to make a swishy back and forth, back and forth. I'm going to get skinnier and skinnier as I get closer to the dot. So I'm making kind of a triangle shape that gets, the point of the triangle be up where the dot is. And then I'm going to pull that color out into the wet area I've just made. And that's going to make my petal. So I'm going to do that all the way around. So I'm going to go kind of a curvy back and forth that gets skinnier and skinnier all the way up to the dot. When I hit the dot, hopefully the paint will just flow into the wet area, but if it doesn't, you can coax it a little bit with the tip of the dropper. Now, in this point, I put the water drops in the wrong place. They're not lining up right with my drops of paint, so I'm just going to take a piece of paper towel and kind of suck those drops up and try putting them down again. So those last 3 dots, I'm going to try and line them up better with my paint dots. But since there's water already there from where the dots were, it's kind of going to get a little bit messed up, but it's still going to look okay, I think. I think it's going to be fine. So I'm just going to put my drop back and forth, wider to smaller, get, to a little bit smaller as I get closer to the paint, and then let kind of the paint flow out into that wet area, maybe coax it a little. So now I'm going to make sure my dropper's clean, and then I think I'm going to pick up some blue, maybe drop some blue into the petals, just kind of see what that does. So I'm just going to drop a little bit of blue into those little wet petals and let it mix with the purple and just kind of see what kind of effect that has. Now I think I'm going to try a flower that starts with some blue dots. So I'm just going to suck up some blue in my dropper and then put 5 little dots in a circle somewhere on my bookmark. And then I will clean that dropper out and pick up some nice clean water. And this time I'm going to be a little bit more careful about lining up my clean water drops with my paint drops. So let me suck up some water, and then I'm just going to go out from this one, put a drop, go out from this one and put a drop, out from this one, put a drop, out from this one, put a drop, and out from this one and put a drop. And then it's the same thing we did before, the back and forth. It gets skinnier and skinnier as it gets closer to the paint drop. And then hopefully when I get to the drop of paint, it's going to flow. Yeah, see, it's going to flow into the wet area. And then I can coax it with the end of the dropper if I need to, but yeah, it's just going to flow into there. So I'm going to clean my dropper out, and then I think I'm going to try dropping some purple into the blue flower. Since I did blue into the purple flower last time, we'll see what happens if we do purple into the blue this time. Now I think I'm going to make another purple flower. And so I'm just going to try and get this purple paint going. The purple paint's a little bit thick right now, but let's see what happens with a little bit of thick paint. Maybe we'll have to water it down some more. And I'm just going to make another purple flower. Now we're going to see what happens if we drop the blue into the purple, but this time we're going to drop it at the end of the tip of the petal, just at the end of the petal instead of before we were dropping it near the center of the petal or near the center of the flower. Now we're going to drop it at the edges of the flower petals and see what that does. I think I'm going to make another purple flower next, but I think I'm just going to keep going. I'll make some purple flowers, some blue flowers. Maybe I'll drop some of the other color into them. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just try some that are just one color. We'll just see what happens. I think that's it for these flowers. I'm just going to let them totally dry and then I'll come back and put the centers in the middle of the flowers after they're dry. Okay, so the feather is dry now, so then we can take the stencil off. So we're just going to peel that stencil right off and see how it came out. And once we get the outside of the stencil off, there's like 3 pieces in the middle that we're going to have to take out. So let's get those 3 little pieces out. And there it is. All good, all done. Okay, so if we flip that over, now we've got the side that has the mask on it. And we are just going to drop a bunch of splatters of different colors, all the rainbow colors that we used on the first one with the stencil. Use those same colors again, and we're just going to get them nice and wet and just get some on the tip. Just pick it up on the tip of the dropper and then just tap on the dropper and get it to splatter all over. And I'm just going to do that with all the different colors that we used on the first one. Now that we've got those splatters everywhere, we're going to start at the top with some red, and we're just going to take a dropper full and just put some drops of red there at the top, right along the edge of the feather, right along the edge of the mask. So we can kind of make sure that we have enough paint on there to define the edge of the feather. So I'm just going to make some splatters right around, just by dropping with the dropper, make some splatters right around the edges of the feather that are going to definitely show where the feather is, if that makes sense. So after I get some of this red done, I can move it around with the end of my dropper if I need to, just to get it where I need to go. If I can't, just drop the drop where it needs to be. I just want kind of a splattery mess, basically. See, right around the edge of the feather. And then once I'm done with the red, I'll clean out my dropper in just a minute. Clean out my dropper and then pick up the yellow, do the yellow, then the green, then the blue, and then the purple, all the way down the feather. So finished up with the purple there, and now I think I'm good. I'm just going to let this dry and we'll come back to it later. Okay, so I'm going to get some white now on the end of my dropper. And I've got my night skies fully dry. And I'm just going to tap the white and I'm going to make little white splatters all over my night sky so I can turn it into a snowy night sky. If I had something that gave me a little more control than a dropper, where I could get teeny tiny little dots and be sure that they were going to be teeny tiny little dots, then I could go for a starry sky. But this dropper's not going to give me that kind of control, so I'm just going to go for a snowy sky. Snow looks good to me, so I'm going to let this fully dry and then we'll do the trees later. Okay, flowers are fully dry, everything else is still drying, so I'm going to grab some yellow and we're going to start putting some centers in our flowers. We're just going to dot the yellow in the centers of each flower. Get a little yellow and dot it in there. Just a bunch of dots in the center. And then since the yellow's kind of bright and I want to dull it down a little bit, I'm going to clean off my dropper, grab a little black, and then just dot the black on top of the wet yellow and just let it do its thing, mix up together however it wants to mix. I'm not going to mix it, I'm just going to drop it on top and let it do what it wants to do. That's the centers for the flowers, just going to set that aside and let it all dry. I'm going to grab these pens that I got from the Dollar Tree. They're not waterproof, so I have to make sure that my night sky here is fully dry before I try to use them. But it is. So I'm going to grab these pens, and I like the thickness of the pen. That's why I'm using this pen. It's like a medium thickness. It's not a very fine line. And I'm going to use that to draw the trunk of my first tree over here on the left. And that's just going to be a straight line down. And then at the top of the tree, I'm just going to make a squiggly line go straight across, a little longer squiggly line go straight across, and then I'm going to start bending the line. So it's kind of almost like an upside down V, a really wide upside down V. And as I go down the tree trunk, the branches are going to go out further and further. And you can see I'm not putting the branches really close together. I'm leaving them really widely spaced. I'm going to go back in a minute once I get down here to the bottom of the tree, and I'll fill them in later. So I've got squiggly lines, and now I'm going to come back up here and I'm just going to go in between all those squiggly lines I just made, and I'm going to fill in with more squiggly lines. And that way I can kind of get the shape of my tree right first and then go back in and fill in. with the other branches that I want to do. So just squiggly lines, squiggly lines. That's what's nice about this. You don't need to be able to do a straight line. You want a squiggly one. And then I think I might want these a little bit longer down here. And then I'm going to make my trunk, I think I'm going to make it a little wider near the bottom. So I'm just going to go back over my trunk and make it just get a little bit wider as it goes down towards the bottom. Just a tiny bit. And then fill in some more. And I'm just going to make some more trees like that. So once I finish this first tree, I'm going to do another tree over on the right-hand side, just slightly smaller, just slightly shorter than that first tree I did on the left. But the same concept. I'm going to make it exactly the same way. Okay, next tree, going to be slightly smaller than the tree before. I'm just going to keep doing that, going back and forth, left to right, right to left, making each tree a little bit smaller as they get towards the center. Okay, and they're all just made the same way. So now I'm just going to put a little black down here at the bottom edge just to make it look like there's some ground down there. Also, what you can do is if your trees don't work out, you can turn them into mountains by just coloring them all over them in black. Just make a silhouette of a mountain, and you could just do that too if your trees didn't work out. But I think my trees are okay. So I'm just going to put a little bit of black down here at the bottom, fill it in with my pen. And the good thing, once I get it filled in with my pen, the good thing is that this ink is not waterproof, which means I can actually use the water to make it fill in and be smoother. So that's what I'm going to do. Once I'm done drawing a little bit with the black down there, I'm just going to grab some water on the tip of just get the tip of my dropper wet, and you can see that the black just acts like black paint now. And I can just very carefully just smush it around a little bit and make a nice smooth black down there at the bottom. Now that I have finished my trees, I'm actually going to pick up some more of the white on the end of my dropper, and I'm going to do some more sprinkles of white just so I have some snow falling in front of my trees as well as above my trees. So I'm just going to put some splotches down here so it looks like the snow is falling in front of my trees as well. And that's it for the night sky one. Just needs to dry. My feather was drying. I accidentally touched the bottom of it and kind of smeared this one dot down here at the bottom. So I'm going to take a little bit of a magic eraser, get it wet, and I'm going to try and just damp, and I'm just going to try and rub that extra paint off the bottom there so it looks more like the dot that I had there before. I'm not going to be able to get all of it off, but you know, I think I get enough of it off that it still looks like a dot and it's not going to be quite so noticeable that I stuck my finger in it. Time to pull off that mask and see if it looks like a feather. Just get my fingernail under here and pull on up on the mask. Get that off, and yeah, that's definitely looking like a feather shape. They bled a little bit up there near the top, but it's not too bad. So we got this feather on this side. And then if we turn it over, got that feather on that side, and that's it for the feather. Your envelope's going to also have this little bit of finishing wax in it. And we're just going to put that on the bookmarks. Make sure they're fully dry before you put the finishing wax on so it doesn't make anything smear. If it's fully dry, the wax will not smear the paint. So I'm going to just rub it all over the front, all in just a thin layer, all over the front, all over the edges, all over the back. I'm going to do that on all the bookmarks, and then they will be sealed. And that should keep the paint from transferring to things like your book pages, anything like that. It should keep it all nice and sealed. Just let them sit so the wax can cure overnight, and then they'll be ready to use. All done.